3, 2, 1. Woo! Good day. Welcome to the Curious Observer Podcast, exploring thoughts with Marcus Bonilla. Welcome, Marcus. And I have to say, I think the first time we met was at Texas State. I think that was the very first time you came in 2011
probably.
Or 10?
Yeah, 11.
11, right? Okay, I got there 2010, and I remember the first time you walked in, and the thing that really, even till then, since then until now, what strikes me the most like distinct memory is your voice, man. You have such a powerful voice, and it's just so fitting.
Thanks, man.
That you've opened up the space within the podcast realm. Which, how long have you been, in that space?
So I started my show back in July. So at the tail end of July. So we're coming up on, what is that, 5 months?
Woo!
So
and
it's been a journey, man.
It is, sure. Right? And I appreciate the feedback that I've been poking curiosity at that. Also, especially when the lockdown occurred, and
absolutely, man.
And I think I think a lot of it is because we're all just curious with what's going on, and it's a great opportunity to catch up, and it's also a space where each other's eye gets to be explored together. I think what you're doing with your podcast by giving the opportunity for your friends in a shared space is special. It's very special, and I want to ask you this, before I ask you this question, if I may add before the question, quite era defining. And here's the question.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
About that sentiment or the starting of my show, or both?
I'm sure we can look at it from both ways. From the start of it, and perhaps you can share what comes to mind, what it means in terms of the matter of factness that this is such an era-defining time. That
I see.
Yes, and here you are inviting the space within community, where especially in days like these times, where it's actually preferred to stay home. And so it's like, well, what do we do, especially from a distance? If anything, it almost tied in, it almost blurred the distance for this kind of access. Like the fact that I'm hanging out with you here, I'm in San Antonio, and you are in Austin?
In Temple.
So
north of Austin.
Más para arriba. So so it's like, I feel like we're hanging in a music building, that kind of thing. So So going to that question, go for it.
So the reason why I started this was like you're saying, a mix of like what you're saying. I really enjoyed my time in college when I was a bartender and a server and an Uber driver, where I was just constantly meeting people and constantly talking to individuals and getting their stories here and there. And once I started teaching full time, I got less and less than that naturally. I'm still talking to people daily, but it's a difference between me and random dude coming in from West Texas, stopping in for a drink, and me and this 6th grade kid who's 12 years old and is hyped about Skechers light up shoes. Yeah, they just got here, man. Like I've been teaching almost longer than some of them have been alive. Well, like been in the teaching game, if you will, between teching and blah, blah, blah.
It's almost as though you've gotten to have the opportunity to face the realities of life that we are all that awaits everyone. That it's almost as though when we're kids, it's something to be avoided, but it's actually something to be hurdled over. And so you've done that for as the wrestling through the days within ourselves, that time period. Are you saying that that's equivalent to how old essentially these kids are?
Kind of, yeah. Just
at least
just
being
getting
out
the experience. Yeah. getting that experience of teaching as in all the facilities that I've done and all the ensembles and high school and blah blah blah. Like this is my third year of formal education as a teacher, but for
Same here.
About 6 years. Shout out, congratulations. But for the 6 years that I was in college, I was also teaching in some capacity. So like that's what I mean by like I've been teaching for almost as long as, 12-year-old. Like in 3 more years, I will be as old as them, if you will, in the teaching game. And that's brought a lot of experiences to me over those years, getting that opportunity to teach as much as I did. In a similar light, if I distinctly remember you being one of like the dudes that was gigging greatly throughout your college experience. Mm-hmm. And so you just have that experience of being in different ensembles and playing with different groups. And, you take those experiences, and if you have the time, which we did this year with being in quarantine, to digest them and understand what they were, you can understand what the effects that they had on you into your person now. And that's kind of how we ended up here with the podcast, is that I realized that that was a big part of me. Big part of my life was talking to individuals and getting to sit down and hear their stories. That was a big part of what I'd done my entire life. And I wasn't getting that. And when you're forced to be alone in your thoughts, I don't know what your living situation is down in San Antonio, but I'm out here in Temple by myself. So
out here in San Antonio by myself. Yes.
Yeah.
Very full of reflection. I can't wait to share 2. I was going to share 1 poem, but now I have to share 2, but they'll drop whenever. They'll drop whenever they have to.
By all means. But yeah, just that top of quarantine, just really having to slow it down and think about happiness and meaning and effectiveness and all these things that I think a lot of us were forced to think about, that we all knew about, but for some reason we're avoiding.
Yeah. It's like we shelve it, but it's always hanging out. And it's like it calls our attention every single time. Every time we look at it, even when we decide not to look at it, it says hello. And it's like acknowledgement. And it's like, why do we ignore it? Why do we notice it? And the question, therefore, is it to notice it? And okay, I'll notice it. Now from there, what? Leave it there?
What do you do with that? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, if I leave it there, it still calls my attention. So maybe it's not just noticing it. So it's like, let me effect into it. And even if I don't know what to do with it, let me effect into it. And then maybe it'll give me an opportunity to have more insight with what to do from there. Like it could be as silly as, like something I've been mentioning to my friends. It's like, I've been working out at this gym. Shout out to Orange Theory, by the way, everyone.
Okay.
Take a look at that. What I love about that. Yes, dude. Yes.
I did Orange Theory for a month, man. It was a good time. It was hard.
For me, my takeaway since last August until now is that I don't think about the workout. I just think about showing up. I just think about go and follow the feel. And the workouts are always different. They're never the same. They're in different combinations. And so therefore they blur like this, the boringness of like, oh, all right, we're going to do that thing again. It's like, no, it's different every time. So you just go in, it's all mindset. It's like now you get to look at your mindset where it becomes more clear when it was blurred at first. But when it's consistent, you see that mindset and your energy. And I noticed that whenever I start to feel pain and the resistance, like my body saying, what are we doing here? It's like, oh, that's the moment where we get to decide the noticing. Where is it? Am I going to let myself like to sow through my flesh slowing down, or am I going to sow an allowance of just let me see what happens if I push a little bit more. It's gonna suck, but let me see what happens if I push a little more. And all of a sudden, it's been an hour. And it's like, I feel great. What?
And now you're done. Yeah.
And then it just, so I that pattern, I noticed it around the house. Like with dishes, like I would say that now I have a consistency. Whenever I finish a plate, I have to clean it. The only exception I don't clean it. It's like if I'm about to be super late and I have to be somewhere and I barely had time to eat.
Yeah.
That's the only exception, and I'll deal with it later. That's the exchange. But most of the, and like what it has to be taken care of right there. It's that zone. How can you compress it? And of course, that zone shows up in working out, shows up in thinking, shows up in in conversation, shows up in ideas, thoughts. What comes to mind along that thread?
I mean, that's a large part of just kind of how I go about my life. And this was one of the things that I was battling with at the top of quarantine was this notion of nobody's going to outwork me, right? Are you always going to hustle? You're always going to stay busy and all these things. And when I have the option and the world's, not on fire as it sometimes feels currently, I'm like, yeah, let me work 90 hours a week. I'm down. I got that all day. Like, hell yeah, I can put in that work. I know what that takes. I got that. And it allows me to not think about the book on the bookshelf, if you will, right? Because it's like, I'm not going to, like, I acknowledge that it's there. I know that it's important, but I physically don't have the time to go and do that.
So now
because I'm busy doing this other thing.
It has a justified reason, not just a foggy reason, but a specific reason. So it's like going to the, like, the rule is like I have to wash it right after it's being used, but I'm going to be late, and the priority hierarchy puts that underneath the thing I have to go to right now. Mm-hmm. So it's like now there's a realized invisible hierarchy of like actions and series of like triggers that open up all these different actions that turn into, if I may use the word manifestations, I think that's the thought.
But then on the flip side of that, the other part of my thought process on a daily basis is the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the same vein of the only dish that I don't clean right away is actually the my plastic containers, like my meal prep containers. Mm-hmm. Everything else, it's like immediately afterwards I clean it. I just simple tasks like that. Like I always pick up trash as I'm going through the band hall. I'm just like, I feel the need to clean up after myself, because it's like, do I need to pick it up right now? No, but what's hurting me from picking it up right now? Nothing. Yeah. So just do it. And in the same vein of working out, it's like, yeah, you're tired, but you know that after you're done working out, you're not tired.
Yeah.
So go work out.
Yeah.
And you'll like, A, you won't be tired, and B, you'll feel better about yourself because, blah, 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 endorphins, your endocrine system, blah, like,
and you get to recognize you're beating your inner bitch.
Yes. Always striving to conquer the inner bitch.
Yeah. There you go. Something like that. And, I really like that you mentioned even the fact that you specifically acknowledge at the band hall, the trash can. And, it's so easy to overlook the trash can, right? It's the thing that's ugly. That's the thing that's disgust. Yeah. It's the thing that's a discard. We don't want that anymore. Yet it's the thing that allows for everything to have such peace and cleanliness and order, right? So it's like you're recognizing there's a funnel that allows for all of that's connected around it, which is the order, the cleanliness. There's that one spot where should things get messy, it doesn't just stay there. Actually, what a miracle! It goes somewhere and it goes
somewhere
away.
else. Oh, God.
Just like our butthole. So it's like, imagine if we don't wash our butt. Imagine it was like, thank God, there goes the shit, and we don't wash. Imagine that. Imagine a world like that. I mean, of course, we're going way out here, but I guess the point is the circulation of life, the circulation of the day to day. That's the point.
Yeah.
The circulation of how things are connected, even indirectly, invisibly, but clearly connected. Especially when there's an absence of its function, it's like, there it goes. It's very clear that needs to be something to be adhere to. So I appreciate that you mentioned that you make it a point. If I can, I will. You know, how I do anything shows up in how I do everything. And yeah, man, you know, and by the way, let's pull the reins a little bit here. That's the kind of thing that Marcus and I have always found ourselves in since we first met at Texas State I agree. In marching band and the field, on the way to class or out of class, anywhere really. I want another thing aside from your low voice. It's out of many things. I want to mention those two things: the voice, and especially every single time we would speak, we would find ourselves within the depths of vortex of thought, and it was almost timeless. And I was not surprised that these were the kinds of conversations that you were having with your friends. Now, how many episodes at this particular time?
Last night I just recorded episode 44, and I don't know when this comes out, but that'll come out. What's today's day? This is the 6th.
6.
So that'll come out on the 10th. That
Sweet.
Episode. So episode 44.
Well, stay tuned. By the way, I was going to give a plug later, but I want to give as many plugs as possible, as especially if people are listening up until this point. Be sure to plug into Marcus Bonilla's Holla at Your Boy podcast. Where can they find you?
All things social media, and it's so Instagram, Facebook.
And I'll have
we got a TikTok as well.
Right there. Yeah.
Appreciate you. But it's just holla, HOLLA at ATYUHBOI.
Yes.
So if you look that up, you'll find us on all things social media. You'll find us on all things, on all streaming platforms for podcasts as well. So appreciate you allowing me to plug that in.
Oh, for sure. And plug away. And I think this is a good segue into a poem I wanted to toss at you, and this is something that was branched off of something you're talking about, how much the quarantine has allowed an opportunity for deep diving within one's, just reflecting all that has been and has shaped all that is you or one individual. When all that time is just like, okay, we're at home. What do we do? We're at home all the time. What are these thoughts? Why do I think this way? And is there a better way? And man, I could be this way. Man, what? All that. So I wrote it on the 21st of November at 12:56 a.m. I was on a Saturday. I've been writing the times for all of these. It's like they just been
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just let it flow. Here it is. What does it really mean to reflect? If it means at least along the lines of parallel, as one's image, right, on a mirror is parallel to one's face, right? How can we process what is our mirror metaphorically? Looking through the lens, and here's the lens right here. As face is to mirror, the self is as to what? Hashtag puro self-reflection. And the concluding piece, the coda, if I will, is this. The constant piecing together of data that make up the image of oneself through our mind's eye. What are we all? That was just one individual, just yourself, myself, and individual. Now all of a sudden we're just snapping into everybody. What are we all seeing through our mirror? Not only metaphorically, but especially virtually. What comes to mind?
So
We could go from the
face
beginning.
running parallel.
Yes, to
The
like
face
a mirror.
is to a mirror, and the body is to what?
Or even maybe not even the body, but like where we find ourselves being able to say, "Who am I? I'm right here." That voice that's thinking and processing. Maybe not a good idea. Maybe this is a good idea. That processing. What's the equivalent metaphorically?
What is that?
It's
mirroring.
Yeah.
I think it's mirroring choices. You know, I think it's with every, you know, the Isaac Newton, with every action is that equal and opposite reaction, right? But then on still in the same vein of like physics and such, you have like the infinite universes. And I think every choice that is presented to you, you have the reflection would be all the choices possible and all the outcomes possible with that reflection. And it's, you know, choose your own adventure and see. And unfortunately, it's not like the choose your own adventure from back in elementary school, where if you didn't like that, that outcome, you could flip back to the page, see where else you could go and choose that storyline. It's like whatever choice you make, that's the choice you have to deal with that. And whether or not it's a good outcome or a bad outcome, it's the outcome that you chose. And that ties into my thoughts on regret. And I actively try to practice not having any regrets in my life, because it was your decision at that point in time, whether it was a good or bad decision. Whether it ended up being a good or bad decision, that was the decision you felt was the right decision to be made at that point in time. So why would you, quote unquote, hurt yourself for making the decision that you made, right? Yeah, sometimes the decisions we make are less than ideal, and then it's your job to figure out why it's less than ideal.
So an opportunity arises.
Yeah, and move forward from that. See how you can benefit from that. I was just saying this last night. Yeah, I was saying this last night to the dudes on my show that I've only ever learned through failure. And I mean that statement. It's like seldom have I gotten those big W's in life. You know what I mean? Like I never did like the All-State thing in high school. It took me 4 tries to audition to get into the School of Music.
It's probably better that way.
Yeah. But exactly. It ended up being better that way because I have this work ethic in me to get it done. And I know that I have failed harder before. So if I fail right now, I'm gonna be all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've seen light. You've seen light as the one thing's for sure. If I'm breathing, that's a huge light already. And
yeah,
it's so easy to forget. And you know, it's fair to forget because there's so much other things going on, and we live in such a time where we get to wear clothes, and you know, we have like in our situation, we have a job, and you know, we have we have students to teach, and they look forward to us, and it's like, oh wow, like that's kind of overwhelming. That's kind of overwhelming.
It is,
And
man. It very much is.
so it's like, okay, no matter what loss may come, one thing's for sure, experience has been seen to suggest that just asks the question, what's next? And all right, entering the zone of, well, what's next is a better question than not asking, perhaps.
Yeah. A lot of people choose the easy path because that's the one that they, going back to this analogy of being presented with all the outcomes of a choice, standard practice is take the path with the least resistance, because you know that the outcome is going to be a little bit easier, whether or not it's the outcome that you want. It's the safe bet. So why would you not take the safe bet? And, with those choices, you can have a comfortable life, but then you get into the conversation of fulfillment. And are you happy? And I've had many conversations about what happiness means. And man, it's
everywhere.
It's such an ambiguous statement. Happiness.
It's like, it seems as though it's a capture. And I feel like, I think I know where you're going. I want to see what you got to say.
Yeah. It's just like happy, like almost all emotions are fleeting. So I can't sit here and preach like, yo, if something bad happens to your life, eventually you'll get over it. And then also be like, but when you're happy, you need to hold on to that. Like, no, man, like when you're happy, you should be present in that moment and be like, man, this is dope. This feels good. Mm-hmm. But then also know that like,
it's passing like water that you drank.
Yeah. This too is going to go away. And it's up to you to continue work to allow yourself to feel those emotions. Right? Allow yourself to give you the opportunity to be happy. Right. That's why I like with the path less traveled idea. It's, you and I went into the music game. That's not, many of our colleagues went into the performance game, which is even less of a likelihood of positive outcome. And
differentiating between education and performance, right?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
That's how
like you and I did education, and that's already like kind of a little frowned upon. Like, you're going to be a music teacher. All right, I guess.
Who's saying that?
And then
who's saying that? They don't know.
There's the plethora of parents that are out there where it's like, especially in our communities, man, where it's I don't know what your parents' background is, but like my dad was 20 years military, retired. And the military did everything for us, right? It got them out of the poor situation that they were in growing up. So then my dad joined the military. It's like, yo, why would you not join the military? Like, you get all the health benefits, you get all these things, and you just gotta do the military. Like, just do that. And then I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go be a music teacher. And it's like, but that's not as like clear cut as the military. So why would
especially because that's their experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it's everybody's thoughts are based off of their experiences. And if all you know is what you know, why would you think another thing is going to be a positive outcome? Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's just as likely to have a negative outcome.
Yeah. And I think that just going back to what you're saying about familiarity. I think that's what you're saying. Yeah. And it's, and maybe that's along the lines of path of least resistance and perhaps once again, another thread of perhaps there's timing for, it's like, what's the balance between path of least resistance and this, I don't know which Stoic philosopher says it, but one of those people, one of those Greek, or I don't know the depths of like who said
somebody.
Yeah. One of those Stoics, blunt talk.
Gotcha.
the path is found in like, I think I'm totally butchering this. So no one said this. I'm paraphrasing.
You got it, dog. You
the
got
obstacle is the way, or something like that. Obstacle is the way. So it's like very opposite of the path of least resistance is where you want to be, because that's where ultimately it's like if you're playing soccer, that's where, that's technically scoring a goal. What opens the path for least resistance so that the ball goes in. And at the same time, the obstacle is the way, because I can see how that's going to be heavily fortified, and perhaps because it's fortified, now you have to go through that and create a situation where you can disturb the field so that you can create, once again, that path of least resistance. I'm not a soccer player, by the way. So, any soccer players out there, you're welcome to talk shit. It's all good.
No, man, but that's exactly like, for me, I think it's important to be uncomfortable. Again, I don't think I've ever been truly comfortable in my life. Well, that statement's a little vague. I've always been comfortable in the sense of I've always had a roof over my head, always had a job to pay the bills. I've always had blah, blah, blah. That's always been taken care of. But like in the sense of like, not just stopping there, right? Like I could have just had one job to pay the bills, and it could have just been a better job than the one that I was doing. But like the goal was to teach. So I was teaching down in San Antonio while living in San Marcos, and I was getting paid $100 for a season. Obviously that's not paying the bills. So you got to supplement that with a bartending gig and a waiting gig. And then you're able to pay the bills that to live that comfortable life. But in doing that, you then negate the comfortability of like time management, because then you're working 6-7 days a week, going to school full time, working full time, trying to go teach in a city that's over an hour away from you. It's like, that's what I mean by being uncomfortable, is like putting yourself in these situations where you are forced to learn, you're forced to grow. You can't stay stagnant. And that is also the beauty of the industry that we chose, of music, where if you're staying stagnant, you're losing gigs. You're not getting paid. Even though we're educators, like I just, the fundamental of being a musician, if you're not growing in some way as in music, you are then making something worse, whether that's yourself, whether that's your students, whether that's the people around you. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
So it's like we're almost fortifying pretending versus fortifying the sharpening of an axe, the sharpening of a sword.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be chopping, it's got to be slicing, and it's going to be now enduring dullness. So it's like, well, I can't be going out there with a dull sword, so I have to sharpen. And so there's a circulation.
Yeah, exactly.
And because of this, I've been so curious to ask along. I'm trying to formulate a question, but along those lines, because this is at this time we're in the 6th of December, and podcasting is its own kind of thing, and 44 episodes, man, that's freaking awesome, man. Heck yeah!
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
And may more continue to flow, the sharpening continue to be found, and I'd be curious to ask you this: what kind of sharpening are you finding, not only in articulation but specifically welcoming the eye of others, especially in this beautiful mix of culture that has arisen into this, this mysterious 2020. And it seems as though this roaring 20s is seriously living up to its cousin or previous generation from 1920s to 2020s.
Yeah, it's a young predecessor, old predecessor. Excuse
and
me.
By the way, I'll add this thought for you're welcome to thread off of this later. Imagine if they had, Instagram and all of the. Let's just say right now it's 1920, and then the whoever is doing this right now in 2020, right? Hypothetically, what kind of data they would have of these people?
Oh yeah, jeez.
Look at all that. So in terms of bringing it back to the first question, I guess we can use that as a lens.
Yeah.
What are you finding that's becoming a realized sharpening of a sword metaphorically?
So much like I was talking about intrinsically looking into my own mental state and all that of quarantine. I also kind of was forced to look into the world of teaching, right? I don't know what the situation has been down there for you in San Antonio, what your district is, but I chose to work on myself physically, mentally, and job wise, if you will, for lack of a better term. Right. Mm-hmm. So mentally, I got really heavy into meditation. Understanding what it means to actually breathe and relax with oneself and be more observant to one's surrounding.
The miracle chemical reaction that happens in the body. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. Acknowledging that, working through that, and acknowledging that's a practice that you have to practice. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, you can't just tell yourself to calm down. Like, you have to work on what is your state of actually being calm. And so if you know what your state is and you're up here, you know how to work it down to here, as opposed to before, where it's just like, if you don't know where the calm level is and you're up here and just like, calm down, son. And then you come down here, like, all right, I did it. It's like, not really, dog. If you're supposed to be here and you're going there, you took a step back, but you didn't fully.
Just because you checked off the box doesn't mean you fulfilled the full
actually
task
did the
at
work.
hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And then physically, don't have to go too much into this, but I set out to, I've always been a gym rat of sorts, and I decided to actually take that to the most extreme and work in, set a goal of competing in a men's bodybuilding physique show.
Dang, bro.
Yeah, man. And
how's that going?
I'm 10 weeks down. I've got 2 weeks to go. And, I'm pretty excited for it, man. I'm excited.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. Stay tuned. 2 weeks from now, that's going to be around Christmas time, right? Yeah,
December 19th.
So you're going to wear a little one of those little pants and with a Santa hat, or what?
That's coming out on the calendar later, man. Yes.
Hello?
No, it's a pretty basic show, you know what I mean? And again, it's just like a personal endeavor of finally taking the physicality of myself seriously. You know what I mean? I've always worked out. I've always tried to eat right, but I've now forced myself to what does it actually mean to do these things? What does it actually mean to
view yourself as a vehicle?
Yeah. And it's been really enlightening, and it's been really hard as well.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah, and then talking education wise, man. Like I asked, I don't know what you're doing with what your district is doing, but from the jump of the school year, we were doing the hybrid method of some kids are allowed to be online, some kids are allowed to be in person. And thankfully, since I'm at a high school, UIL passed the rule where you could come in person for all UIL events, and then you could take all the rest of your courses online. So that's what was my saving grace, because all my band periods at the high school are in the morning. So kids would just be able to come up in the morning, and we had morning rehearsals as well. So you come to morning rehearsal, you stay through your class period, and then you bounce for the day to go take your rest of classes. Wow. So I had a bunch of kids that were technically remote learners, but I didn't have to deal with that too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I had 3 kids, 4 remote, and you know,
Strange time.
I had to figure out how to teach that.
Yeah.
And then
we're all figuring it out. We're all trying to figure it out.
Exactly. And then
everything.
now, similarly, since you're in your 3rd year and you're at elementary, right?
Correct.
I don't know what it's been like for you, but my first year, I got a pretty good view. Like, I got a solid group of kids, and I was like, yo, mad talented, dope. I can go from here and just keep cranking that up. And then last year, like, there wasn't much of a drop off, and I was like, nice. Like, I can keep moving it up. But then this year I realized, like, I took a big step back and kind of looked at where my kids were actually at. And I started asking a lot of these like fundamental questions of like, just like simple things like, yo, count this bar of syncopated eighth notes.
Like quick little assessment.
Note? Yeah. Quick little assessment. What's this note 3 ledger lines above a treble clef? And like all of them were just like folding on all of this information.
Anyone who is not a musician, if you're listening to that, you're like, what's that? It's just music code. And, there's certain things that, when you hear certain things, you're going to recognize because that's what it is. That's when you're a musician. But as a teacher, right, it's certainly the role of showing them how to, being able to recognize that. And if they can't, it's like, oh, okay, and that's what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
So the analogy that I was giving to like my 6th grade, like, cause I also teach middle school. But I use a lot of sports analogies because, they're just a little bit easier to digest. It's like in that sense, I like all my kids were like killing it, shooting threes from the side, like from behind the arc. And then I was like, cool, pass me the ball. And they were like chucking it to the rafters. Like, that's what it felt like. I was like, what do you mean you can shoot it 3 like 9 times out of 10, but you can't do a simple
pass,
like pass or like a bounce pass or like a
dribble.
Layup, just like something really fundamental to what it is that you're supposed to be doing.
Or even endurance.
Can you run down the court and like half of them fall? Like that's what it felt like.
Or do 30 minutes.
Yeah, it really forced me to be like, yo, how do I take the step back from my ego of being like, I've got a good program, my kids can do X, Y, and Z, and being like, yo, my program is just kind of okay, and they can only do A. So scratch that. No, that would be good if they could only do A. They could only do F. They missed A through E somewhere between 6th grade and where I have them now. And I need to figure out how to fill in all those holes.
Right.
So that way we can, as I progress them past F, it actually makes sense.
So like, would you say that they're very good about doing the thing that's requested on the present tense? Like, here's the thing that is happening at this moment. They can deliver it. When it comes to the fundamentals of being able to not only do that, but also be presented new things and being able to transfer what they could apply in that present F, they could apply it to the next new one. Because
exactly.
they have the foundation.
Exactly.
The foundations is it's almost like it accidentally works for the present. It doesn't mean that they actually understand, kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like when I explained rhythms to them, they understood them. But if I just gave them a piece of music and be like, rhythms. Yo, learn the first 4 bars, I'll be right back, they wouldn't be able to do it. But I would play it for them. They're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I can do that. But that disconnect, as a lot of musicians have, of like eyes to fingers or eyes to hands.
You're the mediator.
They didn't have that. So that's been a venture for me this year, and figuring out as 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders, how do I best serve you to be better musicians without being disrespectful to like what you know already, while also giving you the information that you missed.
And that makes me think, is that what comes to mind when since the lockdown has been in full-fledged, right? Since March,
Yeah.
and in terms of reflection and expanding into endeavors outside of teaching, and especially within your creative realm, which is the podcast, right? Would you say
Yeah.
that these kinds of reflections have been showing up much more present, or presently? I'm sure if that's the right use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's come in the form of, okay, what I thought was such, it was my ego distorting reality, and it's actually this, and you're facing it, and it now offered you data to recalibrate, right? And that's what you were
No,
saying
absolutely.
personally, and I'm very curious culturally, especially because now that's a lot of people are talking to, man. And I've been listening, and a lot of them are, some of them I know, right? I shared the same classes with them, and it's cool to share, to see what it so that this is just a journey from Marcus Bonilla in the classroom, myself and with my kids. Here's what I'm facing. We can't teach music physically, so I've been exploring making videos for them, and that's a whole other space, because it's like now I have to think in terms of how would they see it. Are they in a classroom?
Mm-hmm.
Are they at home? Half and half. How do I make it so that it's sequenced like the way it would be in present? But I'm not there with them. I can't check on them. So it's a certain, like, I've been finding myself in that same reflective space, and ultimately our kids, your kids, my kids, as much as there's all this culture happening, it's almost as though they really don't know what's going on. They're really blind to it all because they're kids, and you get to see the distinction of what are some of the characteristics of kids. The concept of seeing through each other's eye, especially culturally, is kind of a weird idea, right? But I feel that with those who are adults navigating on their own, making decisions, adults, the spin in culture has become something that is not something that we can ignore, right? It's almost as though it's a noticing. And here's a thought that came to me earlier today, and I thought I would share it with you, and I'm curious what comes. And it goes like this. It was actually, shout out to Kyle Johnson. I was Kyle, trombone player.
Oh yeah.
He messaged me like, hey, how's it going? We messaged each other just like you and I do. Like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Hey, how's it going? That kind of thing. And it's like, hey, let's talk on the phone real quick. And so this thought came out of him. So shout out to Kyle Johnson.
Shout out.
How is it we could be so convicted in information yet end up so conflicted? And something that kids won't really understand naturally when they become more into adults, making decisions and living on their own, that kind of thing. I wonder how much more that becomes apparent for them. But certainly for ourselves, our generation, and those making decisions along the journey, that to me is something that I've noticed that is quite a notable lens. Would you say? What comes to mind?
Say the quote again.
Mm-hmm. It is, how is it we could be so convicted in information yet end up so conflicted? So I think it's so important that that we've been so reflective within our own selves that what becomes apparent is, there's this like battleground out there, and it's like, that's kind of weird. While you guys are doing that, how are you? Are y'all doing okay? It sounds like people are feeling certain ways that may be off centering our. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah. So what that kind of brings to mind would be the political climate as it is currently, where people are more enticed with being on a side than they are with hearing opinions. Right? The issue is that everybody thinks they're right.
Hence, which leads to confliction.
Exactly. Everybody's convicted with their own self-righteousness, if you will, where it's like, I'm on this side. I believe these things. These people say that these are the things that matter. So that's why I say that they matter. So therefore, you're saying otherwise, and you're wrong.
Boom.
And if you're saying that to the other person who feels the exact same way about their side of things, that's how you get that clash of confliction. And they're both rooted in goodness. They are rooted in goodness. They're just like, I believe these things to be true, and I want them to be true, because if they're true for me, that's good for me. So if they're good for me, how could they not be good for you? And people aren't willing to see that. People aren't willing to acknowledge that like an easy one. People an easy one. People on the left, death penalty is bad. Life is sacred. People on the right, abortion is bad. Life is sacred.
Boom.
Right? They're both, the sentiment is life is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about it with the same vigor and the same enthusiasm, but it's within different topics. But because the left isn't talking about that with like abortion, the right's like, how dare you not think life is sacred? And then vice versa. It's like, you're not like, how are you okay with killing anybody via death penalty? Life is sacred. It's like you're arguing about the same shit. You're just looking at it through different lenses. Why can't you just sit down and like pull back for a second?
Yeah.
Realize this.
What's the
and
situation?
Then, like, actually talk it out with one another. And that's hard. People want instant gratification all the time. So when you talk things out, things don't always get squared up. So if they don't get squared up, why did I waste my time on that? It's like, well, it might not get squared up right now, but it might plant a seed in your head to where the next time you talk about it with somebody, another seed gets planted and like, oh, now I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Would you say that that's the encapsulation of what it's almost like the First Amendment is invisible until it's witnessed? Kind of like happiness. It's like, you can't get happiness, but it's a fading and receiving experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Like, freedom of speech is freedom of speech until it's negating my freedom of speech. Then your freedom of speech is wrong. It's like, that's not how it works.
But it's like so justified, and that's where it gets like, oh well, let's justify, let's comfort. Like I had some, I've seen conversations, and you may have noticed through, crossing, the infamous November 3rd. Oh, now how has it all become but a blur? That period, that era. I was raising a lot of questions, mainly because I'm like, I try not to be in the loop of that information, and it's good. I think perhaps we can all find it that it's quite healthy to find oneself doing things that take time away from the phone or the news or this and that. It's like, how can we do things that takes us away from that? And And so because of that, I've been finding myself in and out of the information vortex. And at one point I could feel like I'm informed, and all of a sudden I'm like, what just happened? And
Yeah.
so it's like, well, how about I just live in asking questions? Because as much as one can find, perhaps I'd like to think that most people have different kinds of circles, so they get to see different kinds of information flow.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think that I am in that kind of space where I have a lot of people who are on the right side of the spectrum who I have a lot of respect for and are reasonable, and on the left side of the spectrum who are I have a lot of respect for, and man, we go way back and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And there's this collide, and it's like, whoa. And because of that, and asking questions here, asking questions over there, and what do you think over here? What do you think of this? This is what this person is saying, this and that. Someone asked me, okay, Ricky Ray, you tell me what you're thinking. What are you thinking? What's your agenda? I'm like, may I share my opinion? And sure, go for it. And it was along the lines, and I welcome your thought on this. My view is, there's one side over here looking at another side saying that, they are X, Y, and Z, right? And, for supporting, a particular side. And this side is not looking at those points. They're not supporting that person because of those points. They're supporting for other reasons. And yet they ask the same question to the other side. How could you support them because of X, Y, and Z? But they're not looking at those reasons. They're looking at why this person shouldn't be there. So there's like, because we're not looking at the same thing, kind of like what you're saying about the sacredness. When they're put together, it's like, oh, collision course. Okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, what do you? I'll just ask. What do you think that means culturally?
It's the instant gratification thing, man. We unfortunately have grown up into a society of needing things now, and we need things clearly. And if we don't get things clearly, then it's like, what's the point? We move on from it.
Down to the touch. Does your phone vibrate when you touch it?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And you can't take it off. I took it off once, and then for a long time I was like, oh yes, I don't have any notifications because of that. And then it started to come back. I'm like, to the point where I'm crazy. Like when I grab my phone, if it vibrates, I put it back. Like, no, I'm not letting you condition me, even though it's still conditioning me. But if anything, you're conditioning me, I'm going to condition you over. Sorry, you're saying.
Yeah, it's exactly, man. We've become so conditioned to all these things, and not all of them are healthy, and not all of them are good, but they've become so ingrained in our lives that it's hard to think otherwise. And I think the outcome of this year is going to be, although it feels as much as I am a realist and very much present thinker, I do have some optimism for post 2020, in the sense of, based off of everybody I talked to, a lot of them shared the same sentiment of like, they're forced to think about something this year during quarantine. They were forced to think about themselves. They were forced to think about what their development is. They were forced to think about whether or not they were truly, what path they were on was inviting happiness into their life or not. And a lot of them realized that they weren't, so they adjusted. And I think because people are allowing themselves to adjust, ultimately we'll be in a better spot.
Yeah, it'll make us recognize, oh, this thing is actually not just some cool thing to have. No, it's like, it's actually infected our minds in a both beautiful way and concerning way.
Yeah. And I think people are out there asking important questions, and they're asking questions in a way and in a depth that aren't able to be answered right away. Right. even a bullshit answer has to have some depth on it. You know what I mean?
May I request real quick on that? I feel like it's along those lines. Like one of my, not one, many friends have accused me of posing mental gymnastics, and honestly, I'm like, mental what? What's that? And apparently the mindset behind it is, oh, I'm gonna speak in a very weird way so that I could like try to trick you and this and that. I'm like,
yeah.
Honestly, I'm just talking like out loud and I'm just capturing it through text. And however it comes out, I pause and I reflect. I'm like, oh, how can I make it more clear? Because I'm very cluttery. I'm very cluttered. I'm very wordy. But it's not because I'm trying. It just pops out like that.
Yeah,
And
this is what happens.
yeah, and even I try. There's one response where I was like very concise. I trimmed a lot, and she was still like, it's still a little bit of mental gymnastics, but I think I see what you're trying to get at. I'm like, hey, you've known me. I've always been like that. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be, gymnastic here. I'm just, if anything, I have a hard time talking. And that's one of my reasons for the podcast. I want to get better at, thinking and articulating and, just communicating. And so I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, man. And I was just talking about this and the episode that drops tomorrow
Stay tuned.
on my
Stay tuned.
on my podcast. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, again, depending on when you drop this, the episode that came out on Monday, December 7th.
December 7th, you heard it.
Yes, that episode. We were talking about. I view a lot of things in its fundamental and its simplicity. And I think that's what makes me an effective speaker, is because since I think in the way of like boiling things down to like its smallest point,
where the bottom line is.
I'm able to articulate things in the same way. And on that, it's just like, I don't think that there's vicious people out there trying to end the world. I think everybody has intentions of good. Yeah. I think everybody's intentions are rooted in the betterment of their people, and whether or not that their people is the entirety of the human race, or their people is, rooted in racism. It's rooted in what they believe is to be good. Mm-hmm. And if people start there, I think if you allow everybody's thoughts and views to be rooted in good intentions, we can then move from there and work on whether or not they truly are good, what we can pick and pull from them, what is and scrap what may not be for the true betterment of everybody else. But like, again, that shared sentiment of life is sacred. Like, we can take those things out and just be like, okay, if we all think life is sacred, why do you think that saving this life is bad and not saving that life is bad, and vice versa? It's like,
and all in the same space where there's people that could also find good within their tribe, their culture, their country. And if you cross because you're not from that, off with your head. And it's crazy how even that exists. So like at the end of the day, yes, good, it exists within intentions. But if one is perceived not good, it's like, okay, well, how do we clarify that? Because if we don't talk it out, there's only physical encounter. So the mystery, this invisible space of tongue, the language, the communication allows for, instead of who are you, it's like, oh, it's this and that, I'm from this and that, we're actually all one. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what's that tribe that that's an island that's hasn't been touched by any modern civilization? Anybody that tries to go doesn't make it. And And apparently for good reason, for that, those people, they may have been crossed by a foreigner, so they made it a point to like never again will anyone come in.
Allow it.
Yeah, so it's like for the good of them, yes, for the good of whoever us is and whoever they are, if we're perceived as an enemy, it's like now it changes how do we ease that question now gets to prop up. And and perhaps what comes to mind for me, I'm curious what you think. If there is an enemy, let's just say hypothetically, trying to weaken or threaten all of us, I think you're right. I don't think there's an entity that could. There's too many people. It's too much madness. But how could that happen? It would, my opinion would be, well, how about we weaken it for generations? And I'm going to be a little crazy here. I'm going to talk crazy here. Here it is. How about we pump you with sugar? How about we pump you with misinformation? How about we pump you with all this misleading culture and just devalue all the things and disrupt the home? However that could occur, because certainly that seems to be the conversation that has been noticed. And I don't know what to make out of that. I'm not a scientist, but according to stats here and there, I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with that. Is that a weird thought?
Nah, it's not, man. And man, I hate that.
Yes,
I have to cut this a little bit short. Like I said.
By the way, yes, I did. We did say for now, are y'all, ladies and gentlemen. Let me ask you this one last question to kick y'all out here. It's this: where can we find you?
Let me finish this kind of basic thought real quick before I do all the plugs and such. But just, I think it starts with yourself, man. I truly do. I think if you're not willing to work on yourself and tend to your garden, you can't go forth and help people with theirs or try to trash theirs. Like, if everybody's trying to trash each other's gardens, then nobody's getting to eat. Like, work on yourself, make sure that you are a better person for the world, and then from there we can move forward and change some of the negative outcomes of our current state and hopefully make things better for the future. But who knows? Like I said, I'm very much an optimist, and we shall see if any of that happens. And who knows? We might just get killed by a meteor, and all this is for naught.
But along the way, shall we check on our neighbors, and shall that ripple for as long as this flesh is attained and encapsulating the entity that is us? That is a weird thought, and we'll leave it there. Man. And by the way, thank you for your finishing thoughts. And absolutely. Please, you're welcome. Where can we find you? And once again,
all things social media. It's holla at your boy. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all podcast streamings, Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. It's all HOLLA at YUHBOI. Holla at your boy. We're just out here trying to give some people some space to talk, man. That's all it is.
And thank you for creating such space here with me, and I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully, get to see you soon, brother. It's always a pleasure getting to see you in person. And then hopefully we get to do this again, whether it's I'm back on your show or you're on my show. But
let's keep vibing. Puro vibra wherever absolutely. It's found. Wherever it's found. And by absolutely. The way, for anyone that's reached this point, be sure to hit that red button, that subscribe button. There's a like button. Make it blue. Make it blue. And by absolutely. The way, there's that little bell that pops up. Be sure to hit that so that every time, whenever we have our conversation, you always get that ping. Good day, everybody. You know what